I'm Jake Taylor from In Heart's Wake, and I'm hanging with Rob from Front Row Live.
Well, dude, first of all, I'm excited for this album. Just the first three tracks that you released and the most recent one, Hellbringer. Tell me about the dynamics of the creative process for this upcoming album, KALIYUGA.
Different than in the past, and that's because I was living in LA and I was doing a lot of survival stuff. And through my time out in the woods alone and learning lots of things, I was bringing different things differently to the table creatively. And the boys in the band back here in Australia, they were also bringing different things. So we had all these intertwining perspectives then come together to, a band is always a collaboration, but rather than this always being melted in the same pot, it came from different parts of the globe for this record. And so we all had what we wanted to say, and then we had to find that meld and that mesh coming together to make it musically feel right to all of us, and also really be in alignment with the message of what the record was about. So that was a new experience for us, and I really believe it's benefited Hellbringer and the record.
Now, with this record, I noticed that you went back to work with Josh Schroeder. You guys worked with him for every album except Arc, because you guys went with Will Putney for that one. So, what made you want to jump back on the road with Josh again for this fifth album?
Well, the reason why we didn't work with, I guess it has to be explained why we didn't go with him for Arc, and that was because we had an opportunity to work with Will Putney on a split with Northlane called Equinox. And so we were working that together. I was like, cool, let's try something different, because we just done 3 records with Josh, and we didn't want to just come out with something similar, same again. So let's try something different. And in that time away, which was I think it was like 2013. I mean, it's like 5-6 years in between without, not working with Josh. In that time between, we had both grown so much. He was in a whole new studio, and we were completely, evolved in our musicianship, so that it really felt like we were going into this record with our same relationship, but with new skills. So it was like, let's get back to the fun that we had encapsulated together in our relationship, but let's bring new stuff musically. And it was just totally no-brainer. Let's do it again. Let's get back together.
What is it about him that you guys jumped on with him in the beginning and did 3 records back to back?
Honestly, we had very little resource. I was on the internet. We were an unknown band internationally, and I did a whole bunch of research, and I enjoyed the Legend record that he had created, and A Plea for Purging as well. And not only was he in the ballpark of what we could just afford to work with, but his communication, he gave me all of the answers, no bullshit. He was just straight up, but always prompt. And through our relationship of emails and talking on the phone, and I was like, I'm gonna, all the money that we have, our entire career, we're willing to roll the dice on this guy. He just added up. And sometimes you have to take that educated risk in order to check into your gut and say, this feels right.
You guys brought something new because, like you mentioned earlier, the band had already kind of evolved since the last time you worked with him. But what did he bring into the table this time around? Because I'm sure he had all these other experiences as well.
Yep. Well, more and more, Josh really trusts his gut. He's really good at that. He doesn't overthink things. He's even more so that way now than he used to be. And so, he's always another thing. Let's go with it. But if it's not gelling still after an hour or two, let's scrap it and move on, or put it on the shelf. And his whole idea of going in the flow and just turning it on and turning it off, really it gave us less of a filter of it should be this. So Worldwide Suicide, that was created in 3 hours. Whereas some other songs, they took much longer because they were more thought out, and it was in Australia writing and sending it here. But it just goes to show, like, Josh is just really good with his instinct, and he's very up for experimentation because he's done so many records.
Did you guys have it done before the whole quarantine situation, COVID situation start happening, or were you guys still working on it during?
Oh no, it was done. We finished it in October. At the start of November, it was finished.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had written a whole record on fire, like about fire. From my experience of having the Californian wildfires, like all the ash just falling in the backyard, and just being like, what is happening? To our own country, I shouldn't say our own country, but the country that we're allowed,
Right.
we're lucky to be here.
Right.
But in indigenous land, all these different things were happening about the fire management, and fingers are being pointed over at climate change, climate crisis. But long story short, we have this huge fire happening here that was, it was cataclysmic. It was, over 1 billion animals
heartbreaking.
passed away in that fire. Yeah, and we have this record that's like already written, or it's in its final stages of that happening. So it was in a way, it was scary how prophetic some of the things were that we were feeling as we were writing them. And we've got masks on in the clip and all of that, and that's before COVID was a thing. Like I had, but it's just really, if you look at it, it's a state of the world domino effect of where we are now. The signs were lighting up. It's not rocket science, I guess.
As far as like vocally, for you, how did you challenge yourself this time around?
We experimented with different microphones. Went back to the roots, using a handheld on some of the songs. And Josh and I have a really good dynamic where he would just, like, literally just run up and down the hall, strangle yourself, like doing some messed up stuff. All in safety, but those choking sounds you're hearing in Worldwide Suicide
it's all real.
It's me, like, it's kind of real, and it was like, it was a burst of whatever that session was. Just go for it. Like, what do we have to lose? Just an hour. Let's go for it. So allowing myself to just let go of like controlling it so much in the performances, that was a new, less calculated approach. And getting a bit more rhythmic with things, finding its own flow, and allowing repetition instead of always new words. Definitely discovered some new things. There's a little bit of melodic stuff in there too, you'll find when you listen to the full record. That's something we've never done before. We really explored not only range, but dynamic, into softer stuff to louder stuff, like the poetry in that and finding voice. Yeah.
Do you feel like because you changed you had some melodic rhythms, how you were saying, like, do you feel like you had to write it differently or learn to sing it differently in a sense?
No, it's all just discovery. It's all just discovery, to put it with you. Like, music will be music. Sometimes the lyrics and the part might come first and the music will work towards it. But it's more so discovering new ways because it's exciting, and we want to listen to a part and be like, oh, like, that's exciting for us to hear because we haven't heard it done that way. Or maybe it just needs to be what it needs to be, and not try and find something new, but just really leaning into the bold choices and leaning into where it just needs to be what it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes finding what that is can be challenging. But yeah, I think also the nakedness in voice, trying to not always be so full on. I find I've found that hard in the past because it's more like, oh, that sounds like me, rather than something so other that it's full on and it's not like you talking. So finding those rawer moments was a challenge, because you've got to find confidence in that in order for you to believe what you're performing.
Right, and you were mentioning earlier you had more of that live approach. So watching the video for Hellbringer and listening to Hellbringer, like, I feel like that was one of the tracks that you guys literally like set up a stage and just performed it, and that was the record. Is that how you guys kind of came about with the idea of that track in particular? And talk to me about Jamie Hails and wanting to bring him on board for this record.
Sure. No, that song was instrumentally, it came first, and that was something the guys, Ben and Evan, had cooked up, the guitarist, back in Australia. And Josh and I, when we were listening to it, it was just so, like, it was groovy. It had like this metal, unapologetic metal fun and sort of sort of like cheeky. There's a cheekiness to it,
Mm-hmm.
and so the story from experience of pickers and judging something based on its cover, a book by its, that all came quite naturally. So I had some fun with that in terms of doing it poetically, lyrically, and putting a spin on it to say, well, you say it's the devil's music here, but maybe the one that's the accuser is the devil and not the one who's the accused, looking at the perspective. So that flowed as it was, and we had a lot of fun writing and doing that one. When it came to Jamie Hails, there was just this part where it's the reprise of the hardcore riff, and funnily enough, worldwide suicide video. We were driving down the highway, the producer and I picking up gear on the way to the shoot, and we were talking about a clip that he had done 2 weeks ago for Polaris called Landmine. I was like, oh yeah, how was that? Oh yeah, it went really well. And I was like, and then he goes, is that Jamie in front of us? And Jamie was the car right in front of us. Turns out he was driving right in front of us. So we pulled up alongside and shouted through the window, like, Jamie. He's like, yo, what's up, man? We're having this conversation on the highway. And that was where the idea dropped in. I was like, yo, I got to ask Jamie to do this part. I'm looking for this part. Like, this is it. So he did that guest vocal 2 months ago, and we wrote it over Zoom, like how we're speaking right now, basically. And we wrote it together, and he tracked it, and we just did this back and forth thing. So that's how that collaboration came about.
That's awesome. Now, this back and forth thing with doing it through the internet, has this been something new for you guys, or have you guys been doing this before in the past?
We usually write over email, and you'll have time to sit with it, but we're not usually in real time speaking about parts, writing them. No, we do it. We've always done that in person. So this record was more of a lyrics, me doing it in my time. Yeah. And Josh and I, the producer, we had time together because we were both in America, whereas the guys weren't, to work on stuff together. But no, generally we don't work on things in real time over the internet.
You also have 2 other collaborations. What is it about these 3 collaborations that you wanted to bring them on board for this record? Why did they stand out for you?
Jamie's the friend. Georgia is also friend, but my girlfriend at the time, my partner at the time, and Randy is my stepdad. So it was about 3 perspectives that were real and unique and close to me in terms of the stories that I was bringing to the table. And Crossroads, that story that we wrote together was literally basically our last night that we were together, officially. We both knew it was coming, being at this crossroads, so we wrote a song about it. Yeah. And that was written in 2 days, that entire song. And Randy, that you'll hear in that song Iron Dice, he's my stepdad. It was this expression that he was feeling at the end of that track. You'll hear it, and it's full on. It's pretty awesome. He's just letting loose on the mic. And that was another really real coming full circle experience for me, being his son, to record that and work on that together. That's pretty cool.
It caught my eye with Georgia just because she's not a singer, right? She's a theater. Is that right?
She's both.
She is both.
She's both. She can sing, and therefore she's a singer. She's got a couple of songs on Spotify that she's released this year.
Oh, wow,
but she's an actor. Yeah, she's an actor. She's done a couple of some big shows. Yeah. Because
I was like, man, that creative process must have been did it feel like you were teaching her how to write? But if she has her own music, then obviously that probably just came natural.
She learned a lot, and so did I in doing that. Yeah, because it was more of having Josh. It was more of a let's not overthink it. Let's go. Let's just feel it and go, as opposed to overthinking, which is what she's used to doing, working on something for so long till it's perfect. Same with me. But Josh was just he gave the space to say, you know what, how do we feel, and let's just go for takes. Let's just try, let's just do it. And that's what you hear is the product of those 2 days, going from should we do a song together to we have a song.
What was that like for you? Getting vulnerable on a situation that you were currently going through? Did that make it harder for you to kind of like want to open up to your audience, or did it make it easier to open up to your audience?
It gave me permission to
Mm.
to be vulnerable and to realize that the more human that we are in admitting what we're feeling, the more accessible it is for people because we're all human. So coming to that realization for me has been an opening point as an artist, and it doesn't mean that it's easy. But having that safe space to also go, you know what, this doesn't have to be released if we don't want it to. Like, it can just, whatever it is, it will be. We can make that decision later. It puts less expectation on it, and with every record that we do, I want it to be like, from the heart as much as possible, so that it's a real time capsule of what was happening for us artists at that point in time. Right. And with that being said, like, there's a lot of heart in this record.
What would you say was like the most challenging track for this album, whether it was for the whole band or just you in general?
Crossroads is challenging because it's very different from the rest musically. So getting everyone on board with it, not because they didn't like it, but everyone on board to find where it flowed in the record and why it had a place, was always an interesting conversation. It wasn't challenging to write, though, that being said. The song that was most challenging to write, believe it or not, is Moving On. And that was because just finding a chorus, when you have 10 different choruses and you kind of like them all, it's like, which is have we ever thought it and we just go back to the original one? So that was the most challenging to write.
One cool thing that I saw that I'd love for you to explain to me about this album is that it's 100% carbon offset. What does that mean exactly, and where did that idea kind of stem off of?
Looking at our impact as a band, knowing that we want to put ourselves in alignment with the planet as much as possible, in order for that engine to work, in order for this the long-term vision to get to our destination, we have to realize, okay, we need all of those gears in our engine to be working as best as possible. And part of that is realizing we can't have the handbrake on while we're driving. And part of that is really looking at, okay, well, what's our impact? What can we reduce along the way so that we can get to this long-term goal? And so that comes with a less is more approach to everything that we do, as we're starting to discover more and more all the things we were doing we didn't even realize. So when you start to record your movements, you're in the studio, I was recording the power from an outlet reader, like the main power, counting the lights, counting the driving miles every day, the airfares that were taken, having a food and meal allowance, counting the freight of all the guitar strings and drumsticks, where it came from and how heavy it was. Putting all of those, like getting all those calculations together, sure, it's a bit of data entry. It sounds like a lot of work, but it was more realizing, okay, like these are all the areas that we do to do what we do. Maybe we could do with less of that. Maybe we could do with less of this, but also, what's the experiment here? How much does this tally up? So I took all of that data and I worked with a carbon consultant, and we put it into a calculator where she has all of these formulas in place because it's her job to do this for big businesses. And so we generated the total carbon footprint. I mean, when I say total carbon footprint, I may have missed something. I've done my very best to cover everything, because this is uncharted territory. I don't know. It's not like we want to establish what are the things. So we're constantly having to like adapt the model. But that was why we did it, and that's how we did it. And I think that it shows us like, for every movement we have to record it. So perhaps there's ways in the future to do less, so there's less to record, and therefore our impact on the planet will be less too.
I feel like you're starting something new in the music industry.
You never know. I don't know. It's risky territory, because again, like our carbon footprint could have turned out to be like an inconceivable amount that we could not afford or have the means to offset. We had no idea. I mean, it was always an experiment, but we actually realized it had no expectation. I don't even know what it would be, but we've realized it's actually quite affordable to offset all of this. And I would like to like share that with the world to know that this isn't an impossible task. We can all be doing this.
That's interesting. Yeah, it caught my eye when I first read that. So thank you for explaining that. Now this album drops August 7th. Is that date still set in stone, or is there any like new time frames for the record?
No, it's set in stone. This record that date was set last year. worldwide suicide, Hellbringer, all these dates were set in stone, and as we're in this age of KALIYUGA right now, I really believe that facing our past, facing the present right now, as we're moving through oppression, we're moving through fear, we're moving through all of this stuff, destruction, disease. I really believe that this record is for the time, and it's all as it has to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, nothing's changing, man.
Did you already know about this scripture before, or KALIYUGA, or is this something that you guys kind of researched in order to write when you guys were starting to create this record?
No, I've known about KALIYUGA. It was when we were deciding on, like, what is the name, what is this record, what is the theme, are these collection of songs. I was like, I was describing to myself, I'm like, wow, these are tales of a dystopia. These are like, it's KALIYUGA, like, and I was like, oh, KALIYUGA. I'll see, what do the guys think? I wrote it out, the title, like, and it felt like it encapsulated, all of these stories, all of these dystopian tales.